Hi, I'm Chuck Wagner, and I played the title role in Glenn Larson's sci-fi cop series, AutoMan.
But tell me, why did you call me AutoMan?
It means that you're the world's first truly automatic man.
Well, I was still a young actor coming out. I'd just done a couple of years on General Hospital, and my agent got the script and sent me in, and I walked into the room, and it was like walking into Valhalla. There was a huge group of muscle-bound men, and I thought, oh, God, I don't really have a chance. But I loved the script. I loved the honesty and the simplicity of the script. And I was fortunate, I think, to have kind of that, I think Glenn Larson kind of saw a similar, because he's kind of that blonde-haired, blue-eyed kind of guy, so I think I had the look that he was looking for. I approached it really honestly, and it was a gift. But my focus, my imagination of my whole life had geared me towards superheroes. So this was like a magical signpost, and the fact that I got cast was a real blessing.
Hi, I'm Desi Arnaz Jr., and I played Walter Nebaker.
Walter, you called?
The way I got cast is I got a phone call from, actually I was in England doing a movie called House of the Long Shadows, and I'd just gotten back, and I just got a phone call. I was, to come in and audition for a TV series, an hour TV series for ABC called AutoMan. And they sent me the script, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I went to do my first reading for Glenn Larson before, you actually audition for the network, and he liked me.
Desi and I have such a great camaraderie. It was so fun to work with him, and plus, I was also growing up. I had the whole, we were, all of us in America were raised on I Love Lucy, so we all were basically children of Lucy and Desi, whether we were, and Desi just had the extra gift of actually being that. So, and all television wouldn't have existed, Star Trek wouldn't have existed if it hadn't been for Desilu. So to work with Desi was an honor to begin with, and then to meet him and to actually, a lot of the commentary I've read about the show is you can't help watch it with a smile on your face, because we couldn't help working together without a smile on our faces. So he was delightful. And then Heather, as Roxanne, just absolutely beautiful. She was the epitome of what a beautiful woman was in the 80s, and still today. It is amazing. I think that, I don't know what kind of sacrifices she's doing, but she's doing fantastic. She just looks fantastic.
Hi, I'm Heather McNair, and I played Roxanne Caldwell on Glenn Larson's show, AutoMan.
Wally, why are you doing this?
You think I'm crazy. That's why you won't go out with me.
I don't think you're crazy. A little strange sometimes.
Roxanne is me. I didn't know enough to know how to make a character. All I knew and all I was trying to do was to make the situations that we were in believable and real. So it's kind of like a little time warp for me.
Captain, did you just say what I think you said?
And I think she wore more makeup and more red than I did. Other than that, it was pretty much me in that situation.
Chief told me to put the best cop in L.A. on this, Curtis. You're going to take Caldwell here with you.
Me?
Yes. Troubled boss runs off with his secretary. It'll be good bait.
Give me 10 minutes and I'll be packed and ready to go.
And then I met Heather that same day, Heather McNair, who had auditioned for Roxanne, the young girl on the show, and we hit it off right away. And there were quite a few other, maybe 4 girls that day that were auditioning with me. And I was actually like completely taken by Heather's audition because she was so natural and believable. So I was choosing her because no one had chosen anybody yet. So I was going, that's the girl, she's great. And Robert Lansing, of course, the great Robert Lansing, who I think a lot of you may have remembered from Twilight Zone back when he was younger. And Jerry O'Loughlin, who did tons of work as a character actor, played the captain. It's a great cast.
Now, wait a minute, hold on. Are you saying that we are Tilson's targets?
Yeah, that's exactly what they say. The terrible thing is it all makes sense.
Hi, my name is Glenn Larson. I'm a television producer, and we're here to talk about one of my shows called AutoMan. AutoMan began with 2 guys walking into my office. They had worked on a motion picture called Tron, and they were into the world of graphics and something I hadn't been too involved in. And while I hadn't been a big fan of Tron in terms of its accessibility to maybe a mass audience, I thought there was that kind of technology would apply to the show we eventually came up with, which was a show about a young cop in a police headquarters whose specialty was computers. And since this was done a little while back, it was long before computers were occupying so large a place in all of our lives. And so he was sort of relegated over into a side room, and the government was paying for a lot of this because they thought there was room for computers in police work. And they would take the money the government gave them and hire more cops and pretty much ignore Walter Nebeker, our little hero.
When are you going to learn you can't solve crimes with a hologram?
Well, AutoMan is kind of the super ego, if you will, of Walter Nebeker's character. He had created, as a video game creator and designer at the time, which was cutting edge at the time. Kids today don't understand how when we were kids, Pong was like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. So on the cutting edge of the new video game world, he created this avatar of AutoMan, and he took, I always got a kick out of the fact that there was one scene where they showed how they came up with they took like Sean Connery and Robert Redford and Richard Burton and I think Lee Majors, because he was a Glenn Larson character as well. You mix all that together and out comes me, so that was pretty cool. But the character was supposed to be the world's greatest crime fighter, the ultimate detective. And he had designed it so well, in theory, this idea was that he became conscious. So I became not only an extension of Walter Nebeker, but I was actually my own individual consciousness as well. So that's why we became a team. So you can't separate the two, but at the same time, there was that separation. It was a pretty fantastic thing. But the ultimate superhero, basically.
Walter was kind of a computer programmer, kind of geeky guy, kind of a nerdy guy. Girls didn't really warm up to him too much. He was real shy. Nobody liked him in the police force.
Never should. I don't want what you just said to get out of this room. You understand that? But, sir, don't talk, just listen. If you make this department the laughingstock of the country, I'm going to kick you and your traveling circus out the window!
Because I didn't think the computers were going to help solve crimes back in those days. And he kind of kept to himself, and he was kind of an introvert, and what he did in his spare time was create video games. And AutoMan was originally a video game, but he perfected to actually come out and participate in the real world. And AutoMan had all sorts of superhero powers that Walter put into the video game. And really, so my character really was a combination of the superhero AutoMan, and Walter was kind of the antithesis of AutoMan. So what Walter created was everything he always wanted to be. Good-looking, sense of humor, ladies' man. And in the show, he says he combined all these great superheroes to create this one superhero. Allowed the program to be able to dance and to sing and to have a sense of humor, so he put in John Travolta and the personality of Jimmy Connors for tennis. And
I could play like McEnroe, although with the mixed company, I'm afraid the language might get abusive.
Walter could actually merge into the hologram and become like kind of Iron Man, like how Iron Man, the guy Stark, gets into the suit. Well, Walter could jump into the hologram and become the hologram. You wouldn't see Walter anymore. His body would be invisible, but you would hear him. So you would hear his voice, which was also very funny.
Hey, I'm you.
You can never be me. You're still you.
Well, then how can I be talking with your body?
And so Chuck, the actor, had to pretend to be me with facial expressions and everything. And then I would go back in and loop my voice over him pretending to be me. And then he would have to go and do both voices. His voice, he would do his voice live, and then I think he did the voice live, and then I would go back and loop it in because he couldn't sound exactly like me. So that was very interesting to do that. And also the way we did it in those days, it was actually live. It was a live effect. So we'd actually have to stand incredibly still, and the cameraman would say, okay, thank you, and then you'd go out of frame, and then I would like jump into the position you were in. So there was all these kind of fun effects that we did, and when I would jump out of the body, there's actually stuff in the show where I'm jumping in and out of his body and talking like him, and looking like him, talking like me, and then I would jump out of his body. If we ran out of energy, I would kind of fall out of his body.
Next time, Nebeker, before you jump to conclusions, check your computer first.
Well, Cursor, the idea was, I don't know if you saw Tron, because clearly we are television's accentuation of Tron. They had the character called Bit, which is basically the on-off idea. Well, the cursor was kind of the paintbrush that allowed him to create digital reality. So he had his own little personality as well. But ultimately, it was just when we would shoot it, it would be a stick, a ball on the end of a stick, and then we would play to wherever it would be. And then David Garber, the guy, the special effects man, who was the magical man behind Battlestar Galactica, he did all of the really complicated special effects for us. He would tell me where it would be. And it's really just a matter of using your imagination. And so wherever I would see it, sometimes we would do it without the ball. And so wherever we would see it and we would track, then he'd go back to the footage and see where we were tracking, and that's where the cursor would then exist. So, but the idea of all that vector graphic rendering was to create the illusion of computer generation, but it was all done old-style hand animation style. So that's one of the reasons we were a CGI series before there was CGI. So that's one of the reasons we were so expensive.
Yeah, so cursor was like your cursor on, with the mouse on your computer, but the cursor, actually the pointer, came out of the computer too, just like AutoMan. But it would fly around the room, and
Cursor.
It wasn't really like a very deep relationship with Cursor. It was like kind of R2-D2 from, so he was a machine that we could talk to, and he would answer, but answer with little kind of like dolphin-like whistles and things like that. So I guess I understood him because I understood his digital, some type of strange whistling language.
Where are you going? I need AutoMan.
I thought you'd never call.
Cursor to me was like a little naughty Tinkerbell, a male Tinkerbell. And Tinkerbell's got a little attitude. He was a little lascivious, had kind of a libido. He was always around buzzing. He was pre-programmed and predestined to like blondes because Walter was crushing on Roxanne. Roxanne was blonde. So whenever there were blondes around, there'd be like a little and you were never really sure. I was never really quite clear where he was, what he was up to, but he was a little buzz of electricity. I seemed like a little firefly with an attitude, a little libido. That's how I see him.
No, Cursor, it has nothing to do with the beautiful young women.
Well, clearly the most famous of our vehicles was the Autocar, and we were the first television show ever to use a Lamborghini Countach. I believe it was LP400. And it had the gull wings, and it was just a spectacular car, but it was literally like 3 inches off the ground, and it was a lot of trouble to get in and out of. Very rarely did they let us drive it. When we were actually driving the car on set, we were in a mock-up that was a little bit larger on the inside, so they could film it. And all the 90-degree stuff that was done in studio in the mock-up car. But occasionally they'd let us get in and out of the car. We'd take it maybe just a little bit, but Glenn bought the car because he wanted the Lamborghini, and a lot of that fast zooming through the streets was shot with camera. They would shoot it at a slow speed and then play it at regular speed, so it looked like the car was, like the rest of the normal traffic would be going super slow, the Lamborghini going at a normal speed, so then when they played it back, it looked like we were zipping through traffic. And then the 90-degree angle is probably the easiest special effect. That's just to cut and paste. So that was a great effect. The auto chopper was just an actual helicopter. They did the same thing with that glowing tape and would shoot it with the same rig, which we'll talk about in a moment. And that could be done in camera, and that was an easy effect to do. So the car and the helicopter could be shot and then displayed the way it was shot. So there was not a whole lot of post-production in those two effects. But the auto plane was actually miniature. And David Garber, again, who did all those Battlestar Galactica Vipers, used the same technique to animate an auto plane, so it was a miniature shot to give that effect. Any of the res-ups were all done with the vector graphic animation technique. And I also had a motorcycle that was just basically a regular motorcycle that they just dummied up too. But that was the beauty of the Cursor. If we needed anything, we could make it happen. So the sky was the limit on what we could do.
Well, the auto chopper, auto helicopter was actually a Bell Jet Ranger, I think. And the whole premise of all the auto machines was that they had this glow to them. And we actually used the same tape that was actually the same tape that they used on AutoMan's suit to then superimpose this glow. And it was kind of a silver tape, and so they taped everything.
Very nice, Cursor. They should do beautifully.
When we made the 90-degree turn, obviously that's like going this way and then that way. And so we thought to ourselves, well, that could be a funny comedic moment, because what happens to the passenger if he's not an automated hologram? like Walter. So what we did was we came up with a comedy bit that when he ever made a turn, anytime he did that turn thing, Walter would go flying into the window. Or sometimes we stopped quickly and he'd go flying backwards, or the opposite, going flying forwards. It was fun. It was a stunt that we did.
You'll never make the turn! God, that was a 90-degree turn.
You programmed me to make 90-degree turns.
Yeah, but that was for a game. All games make 90-degree turns.
I mentioned that the technology was both a big advantage and also a liability, because it required an awful lot of work in the lab to create and it was really quite stunning, the look of AutoMan. And it took a lot, first of all, it took a lot of research and trial by error to create that suit that would virtually make him look unearthly and maybe special and electronic. I think it finally was a combination of special fabrics from 3M and combining them at the lab in such a way that the suit had that look to it.
The AutoMan costume was designed by a man named Jean-Pierre Dorliac, and it was basically a navy blue spandex unitard that was built to fit me. And I remember as they were putting those panels together, the design was roughly fleshed out, but they basically would cut the panels to fit as they built it. So those panels were built on my frame and applied to the first costume, and then basically were repeated over and over again. I think we went through probably 10 costumes during the course of this series. Because it would show some wear, the reflective material sometimes would wear off, and it was essentially, the panels were made of front screen projection material. It's a 3M product. It's like millions of tiny little crystal balls embedded in this fabric, so that like for showing movies, it bounces the light back so much that you get literally almost 100% of the light that comes into it bounces right back into the screen. And the way it worked and the way it glowed on camera, there was a rig called the beam splitter that was mounted to the side of the camera. There was a mirror at 45-degree angle and a very bright light source that bounced off the mirror onto the costume and straight back into the camera. That made these panels super hot. So even the brightest lights in the set behind me were not nearly as bright as the white of these panels. Then they were able to use that to create a negative. They would do a negative of that strip and create a traveling matte. So you'd have the original footage, then you'd have the traveling matte that would cover up all the actual footage and would leave an open window where the panels were, and then they would insert into that open panel the blue starfield effect. That was the costume. That's why they could put anything they wanted to. And several times, like when I would watch a film, I'd put it in and then it would show on my stomach. So they could put anything they wanted to, but they voted on that starfield effect. It was a very cool effect, but the problem with that is, just like if you take a snapshot and that light goes straight into your retinas, boom, you've got red eye. And to fix that, sometimes on that plate glass mirror that was the beam splitter, they would take a piece of tape to block it from your eyes. So it became kind of time intensive to try to stop the red eye and keep the glow. And that was all very fantastic, and that's how you could do the auto car and the auto chopper in-camera shots. But today, if we had green screen technology to make it happen, it would have cost nothing. And at the time, because of the animation and the special effect, our shows cost almost $1 million an episode, which was unprecedented at the time. So we were prestigious in that we were probably the most expensive show on television.
It seems my friends and I have found ourselves without cash reserves, and I was wondering if you could arrange a small loan for us.
My pleasure, AutoMan.
So a lot of the effects had to do with AutoMan when he was being shot with his suit on. And really, in the beginning, we could only shoot AutoMan at night. And so we did all these night shoots, because they hadn't really figured out how to make AutoMan glow during the day.
Well, the suit itself was just wearing today you see everybody's familiar with motion capture, where you just wear the leotard with the buttons. It was just like wearing a Superman suit. So, and I, from the time I was 6, I've been wearing Superman costumes. So I'm used to the idea of it's like wearing that. The thing that was difficult about the costume, though, in order to make me bigger than life, like I'm already not bigger than life because I'm huge, but they put me in 4-inch heels. They made these custom boots. So I had these big Italian boots with 4-inch heels that were easy enough to move in, but very difficult to get in and out of the autocar in. So if you look at the series, you'll very rarely see me getting in and out of the autocar because those heels were difficult to walk in. Well, we shot at 20th Century Fox, and we also shot in various locations in and around Los Angeles. And that was back in the day. The Hello Dolly Bridge was still up. You know, a lot of things have changed in the Culver City lot. But we were shot on some of the same sound stages that the old Batman series shot at, so that was a real honor. And it also, again, ties into that whole superhero childhood fantasy I had, so I'm walking the footsteps of Adam West, and it was amazing. So that was very cool.
In relationship to guest stars that we had on the show, one of my old friends from music was on the show, Michelle Phillips, who was in the Mamas and the Papas. And I was in a rock and roll group when I was a teenager called Dino, Desi, and Billy, and we met them and we used to open for them. So it was nice to have her on the show. She didn't do music, she was just playing a character, an actress on the show.
We had Frances Nguyen, who I remembered from South Pacific. Delta Burke, who was a new starlet on the rise.
And then Laura Branigan had a big hit song out, and she did the show, and Chuck, as AutoMan, got to play the auto guitar.
Her hit was #1, and it was huge. And one of the backup singers of that show was Ola Ray. She was in the Thriller video with Michael Jackson, which had been a huge thing. That had just come out. We got the best of the best. The cream of the crop wanted to come and be on AutoMan. Doug McClure, in our pilot.
Hi, Smithers.
Patrick McNee, The Avengers. I mean, I was every day pinching myself, and I get to be here? Cut it out.
But then I hope you'll realize that your best interests are our best interests.
One of the things that was so unusual, I want to really talk about what made AutoMan, the character, so unusual as a superhero. And in relationship to the show in general, what they were able to do is incorporate some of the great powers and abilities that Chuck Wagner had playing AutoMan and incorporate them into the superhero, which was very unusual because Chuck was trained in musical comedy, singing and dancing, and so the idea that AutoMan, the superhero, was also able to sing and dance and have a kind of a comedy, musical comedy personality that supposedly Walter programmed into AutoMan. But in truth, one of the reasons we came up with all that he dances like John Travolta or plays tennis like Jimmy Connors or sings like Robert Goulet, is because Chuck really was trained in musical comedy and was able to do all of those things, which made the character extraordinarily unique as a superhero. And one of the reasons I loved working with Chuck is because I grew up doing live theater as well. You know, the show in front of the audience, the Here's Lucy show I did, where we sang and danced. And so I was trained in musical comedy as a musician and then in theater later on. And so the fun part is, even as the programmer, even as Walter Nebaker, it was kind of fun that my character programmed AutoMan to be a musical comedy superhero. and in real life, I admired Chuck and his wanting to do musical comedy, you know, because he's a big man. You know, Chuck's a big man. He's 6'5" or something, and you don't see that too much. He's a real leading man, and he in theater, those types of people are hard to find, actually.
There were a couple times when I had to dance. I had to do one was called, it's probably the greatest, cheesiest title ever for a series, was Staying Alive While Running a High Flash Dance Fever. And that was, I think that might have been the second episode we shot, and I had to take I came in the white suit like John Travolta, but at one point I get a little free and I start taking my clothes off, and but as I'm doing the dance from Saturday Night Fever to try to do that, they would cut to a dance double, and the dance double was maybe a third of my body weight, you know, and it, you know, it didn't look a thing like me, and it is the most embarrassing and yet very funny swaps. Every time we would cut to the stunt double dancing, it was like, who are you trying to kid, right? I guess if you're watching it on one of those little tiny televisions, it might work. And so that was funny. And the same dance double He was the blonde dancer in the sequel to Saturday Night Fever. Do you remember that one called Staying Alive? Well, the blonde dancer who was like John Travolta's competition was my stunt dancer. He's fantastic. But doesn't look at all like me, doesn't dance at all like me. So it was an odd switch. He also was my stunt double for the stripper scene where I became the electrician and had to do the male stripping. So I'm stripping and I do a lot of it myself, but then it would cut to the long shots and, oh, look, he's so thin in a long shot. So that was kind of silly. But still, all in good fun, and I think that tongue-in-cheek approach is what was one of the strengths of the series. So,
I think if it was done today, Chuck would have to be on Dancing with the Stars. He would have to.
How interesting.
I really liked The Greatest Game in Town. It's the one where there's a video game convention going on. I thought there was a lot of cleverly written lines regarding AutoMan's character and how all the computer games know him.
Now, Donkey Kong is an animal.
I also thought they used all 5 of us really well in that episode.
Be prepared to pay $10 million or bear responsibility for the consequences.
Whoever they are, they want an answer by tonight's evening news.
Hey, it's locked. Whoever programmed this thing has blocked out any new programming.
Every other computer in the municipal system is acting the same way.
Death by Design was a show that Chuck AutoMan did a takeoff on Clint Eastwood and became like a mean AutoMan. And I think Heather alluded to that. They were trying to give AutoMan more dimensions, kind of, and so they wanted him to be a little more cutting edge. So we actually did a show where he actually kind of turned. AutoMan became like more of a vigilante. See how I'm whispering? Vigilante. And so he changed, kind of became a heavy. And that was fun. That show was really fun because Walter didn't know what to make of it. Like, what's wrong? How come you're acting this way?
Well, I have already slapped around Rafferty's goons. Who'd have trouble believing I was the cop who's gone vengeance crazy? And I have seen all 5 Nasty Eddie pictures.
He was Nasty Eddie, but it was a pretty good impersonation of Dirty Harry.
Cursor, res me up some hardware worthy of Mad Dog.
I liked doing a lot of the stunt work. There was a couple of shows that were just really full of action fight scenes that were fun to do as a young man. A difficult show to do for TV, but we never thought that it wasn't working. What we thought was it was just very difficult. And they were trying to do a lot and change it up so it could compete against other shows that it was opposite. And I thought that there was a formula that we kind of lost sight of that was the pilot, that was the creation with the relationship between AutoMan and Walter. The character I played kind of got lost in the competition for ratings. They started making me look kind of good looking.
Looks like you guys really did a job down there, didn't you?
Well, Agent Man deserves a lot of credit. Pretty cool, huh?
Sexy, too.
well, as you already know about Glenn Larson, he was the genius behind many, many different shows, and there were a lot of great things like Ailey Smith and Jones was really TV's answers to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. McCloud was, there was a Clint Eastwood film where a cop goes to the big city. But he also, is the man behind Knight Rider and $6 Million Man, so that he's already used to the idea of technology and creativity coming together. And when he saw Tron, he saw in that vehicle, he said, there is a concept that he can take the ball and run with. So basically, he took Tron, turned it inside out, and made it happen. So he's amazing. And he's also, he looked at Star Wars, and then he took his Mormon background, fused it together, and created Battlestar Galactica. So he really was about as prolific a creator as there ever was. So, it was a real honor to be working with him. And during the 80s, nobody could touch what he was doing. Sometimes people undercut saying that some of his stuff is derivative, but that is the gift of what he's done. He takes something that he knows will work, and then puts his own spin on it.
Glenn Larson as a producer, was great to work for. He couldn't have been nicer. And in my life at that point, I had been through a lot in my life, and so I was kind of coming into a second stage of my career. And he was actually kind of very supportive of me and wanting me for the part, and was very supportive during the filming. Because they weren't, kind of like what the other two people were alluding to, he was still kind of working on what that character was that was Walter, what was AutoMan. You know, television isn't like a feature film where you have a year to do this and another year to do that. It's very difficult to do an hour show each week.
So we were selling a hologram, which hadn't been done before, really. And we were selling this technology that we could create a person and vehicles and other things. And I think we pulled it off. But I think in retrospect, we could have gone a little more slowly when it came to some of the things we did in the episodes. Even in the pilot, we may have gone a little too far, too fast.
The pilot it seemed to take a long time, because Desi and I oftentimes would have 24-hour days where we would work. I mean, we'd have to take a break a little bit, but there was no sleep for us. They'd keep shaving me. I'd have to shave like every 6 hours because I have a pretty serious beard, as you can see. But to keep me as clean-shaven as possible, if 6 hours had passed, they'd come back in and neaten me up again. But we'd have entire crews come and go, and Desi and I were still working during this pilot because they, you know, like we had to shoot all of this stuff, all that inner dialogue stuff. We had to shoot it twice, once in the AutoMan costume and once in the wardrobe. And then anytime there was, so that was great. I loved that because you go to golden time and super golden time. That was a real blessing for the pilot. We got it down to where the episodes themselves took about, I think, 3 or 4 weeks to shoot. For an hour-long show, that's still pretty fast. And there, you know, and every day we would come in, we'd get multicolored scripts. You know, they'd give us the script, then they'd get new pages, we get new pages, and then we get more new pages, and we come to the set the day we shoot, and we get more new pages. You know, so you know, it was always, that was an adventure.
Well, when we shot, we were on a 7-day schedule to get it all done. So there was always an overlap. Oftentimes there was something called a forced call, so that you had to come back another day to finish. We tried real hard to keep it to the 7-day schedule because that was just so much money. And there was a timing element that was really hard because a lot of shows only take 8 or 9 days to edit and get it on. Ours had so much inner space, inner animation, all the cursor, everything had to be put into that show. So it was about a 4-week turnaround. So if we ran too long and we didn't get our episode shot in 7 days, you know, money, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching.
I think it was fairly popular, except for it was a strange year because of the Olympics, and we were opposite Magnum P.I., which was the #1 show. So it was difficult, but they were spending a fortune on the show. It was the most expensive show ever made for television.
Ah, Walter, fancy meeting you here.
Because it was over $1 million per episode. And it was in the top 10 for a while, I guess. But really, back in the day, and this is even after certain TV series in the 60s and 70s, in the 80s, it wasn't like a TV series was given much time to succeed or not, especially one that cost that much. So if it didn't succeed right away, especially at that cost, that's why there was only 13 episodes.
I can tell you that in the future I will do anything in my power to make sure that Officer Nebusher and his bright ideas are right where they belong, off the street.
You know, popularity is, it's hard to judge. You know, at the time, the Nielsen ratings were the thing that everybody judged the show by. And so we were never super high on the list. We were never at the bottom of the list, but we were not high enough to be the phenomenon to keep us alive. But as far as people around the country, they seem to really love it. And the whole idea of the 90-degree turns and the whole comic, you know, people were very much aware of it, and we got great support when I would do the car shows and the conventions to meet the fans. People seemed to really genuinely love the show.
Well, Walter, We've done it again.
Well, I think we were going in a good direction. We were crime fighting, and we had great tools, and they were different. And had we gone a little slower the first season, the second season might be to introduce a few more things, as opposed to loading them all up so fast. And maybe it just made it too easy. When you create a superhero, you usually have to give him a vulnerability.
On a scale of 1 to 10, think of me as an 11.
Yeah, if they could have afforded to have done the show, it could have had a great second season, because we were just getting our feet wet, really. And so the next season could have been, we could have honed the characters a little better. And I think Heather was referring to the other characters having more to do in the show. I know Robert is a great actor, and he always actually wanted to do more in the show, but it was hard to get all 5 characters in. Same with Gerald Laughlin, and same with Roxanne. So yeah, there was tons of stuff we could have done and taken it to a different level. I thought we were a little ahead of our time doing a comedy superhero thing. That's what that really was, more along the lines, but kind of trying to combine action, adventure, and comedy.
Go ahead. Do the world a favor.
On Monday nights, we were either tying or winning our time slot. But our competition was a show that ended up becoming something like America's Funniest Home Videos. Dick Clark and Ed McMahon hosted it, and basically all the shows that were being filmed right then, it was like bloopers, bleeps, and blunders. They brought all their outtakes. It didn't cost anything. And there was AutoMan, getting the same share of the audience, costing quite a bit. So much more, actually.
We were a digital concept done in an analog way, slightly ahead of its time. I think if we could produce AutoMan today, we could do it with better special effects for a tenth of the budget, and you know, it would be much easier. But we were on the cutting edge, but we didn't have the technology we needed to make it what it pretended to be.
If you compare the $6 Million Man to Fall Guy to Knight Rider to Magnum PI and so forth, it's hard to compare a show like AutoMan or Manimal to those, because they ran for, in some cases, 8 years and covered a lot of ground. Quincy, for example, really introduced to the public the whole world of the medical examiner and how much can be done to solve crimes using medicine. And so it had a function beyond just entertaining, and so you're very proud of one like that. Fall Guy was pretty much an entertainment piece, as was the $6 Million Man. And they did very well at that, and they held their audiences, and 6 Million did a spin-off. But you still love those that didn't quite make it, and but how do you compare them? I mean, they never grew up to full maturity.
You know, Captain, you really ought to let Walter out on the street a little more often.
The most important thing of all is that you're all right.
You know, my whole life I could never thank you guys enough.
I'd like to thank everybody who has helped to keep the memory of AutoMan alive, and it's been such a blessing in my life. And all I can say is, you know, be truthful, don't commit crimes, be good to one another, and laugh.
We did have a lot of fun doing the show. It was one of those rare shows. It doesn't happen all the time where everybody had a great time. And I think it's because we loved the premise of the show. And it was just fun for us to do the show and get up and go to work every day.
I hope that when you watch these episodes, you will get as much fun and enjoyment as we had when we made them. Thank you so much for being Auto fans. Ta-ta for now.